The Spree wetlands. Monotonous, unstructured and slow, the Spree River between Cottbus and the Spreewald runs in a straight line, as if drafted on a drawing board. This is the result of the modifications to the Spree made by past generations. Deficits such as a lack of environmental integration and low self-cleaning capability are now facts of our time. The Spree no longer flows here in its deep gorge, rather on high terrain. When there's a lack of water, it even flows backwards. Dams are meant to regulate the speed at which the water flows and accommodate the various gradients. That is, when there is anything to regulate. The Spree tends to have too little water. In the summer of 2003, the Spree's biggest reservoir, the Spremberger Reservoir, threatened to dry out. This extreme situation was caused by a lack of precipitation, or rather, too little precipitation, ending up in the river system. The state of Brandenburg's environmental ministry has a plan for the Spree that is meant to remedy the situation. One of the projects is the renaturalization of the Spree wetlands between Döbrig and Schmoko. In the coming years, Vattenfall will oversee the renaturalization of an 11-kilometer-long area, creating conditions similar to those of 150 years ago. The rivers flow around 1846. Water was collected and held in the reservoir. A lack of water was unheard of. Through the renaturalization, a reservoir landscape will be created. New environments for fish and amphibians will emerge, and the water balance will be stabilized. The renaturalization of the Spree is compensation for the planned usage of the Lacoma fish ponds. Coal deposits lie beneath the ponds, and surface mining has already moved into close proximity of these bodies of water. The Lacoma ponds are part of a centuries-old man-made pond landscape between Cottbus and Peitz. Over time, as a byproduct of the local fisheries, a new cultural landscape has developed with interesting flora and fauna. Once the coal mining has finished, the area will be renaturalized by flooding and turning the region into a new lake district of the east. The fishermen here cultivate the largest pond region in Germany. The autumn fish haul is a tradition that goes back hundreds of years. Nowadays, they produce more than 500 tons of fish every year. The most common kind is carp. The comprehensive plans to renaturalize the Spree River first began to take shape in 2004. Close to the Lacoma ponds, environmental experts are digging out new basins. They will serve as habitats for amphibians from the Lacoma ponds. Later, the animals are to be moved over to the renaturalized floodplains of the Spree. The man-made basins are measured and will be monitored continuously. They are meant to support the animal's sense of orientation. Amphibians are known to migrate, and moving them closer to their new habitat will help them get used to the area. A fence is built around the basins to protect them from vandalism. Notice boards are erected to explain to interested passers-by what is happening here. The winter rainfall has caused the water levels in the retention basins to rise. The water levels of the Spree weirs have risen along with the river's velocity. Here at the Hammergraben, the water of the Spree flows into the pond region. For the fishermen, it's time to flood the ponds again. With their entire business dependent on having enough water, the fishermen have a vested interest in the Spree retaining stable water levels. In springtime, small fences keep the amphibians at a safe distance from the roads as they begin to wake up from hibernation. In many communities, people help the amphibians migrate safely to their spawning grounds. The types and sizes of the animals is monitored, and they are safely carried across the road to the ponds. the ponds are full, the carp larvae are introduced. Just as they did in Lacoma, the carp now grow in the waters of the Peitz pond landscape. The fishermen introduce no less than 8 million carp larvae. Only about 1/10 are later harvested. By continuous monitoring, the experts can assess the amphibian population in the ponds. Later, the tadpoles of toads and frogs are relocated. Towards the end of spring, the familiar frog chorus can be heard from every pond in the area. These ponds, with their shallow waters, naturally serve as a perfect habitat for amphibians. Relocating the amphibian population is one of the most work-intensive steps in preparation for the renaturalization project. This pond is no longer in use. The amphibians will soon lose their habitat here, as the plant life is overgrowing without the fish. The monitoring results have led the environmental experts to export tadpoles from here to the newly flooded man-made basins. The fishermen help to catch the tadpoles. They feel a sense of responsibility, even for the ponds they no longer use. They don't want to be accused of being complacent towards the other species in the ponds. The type, number and size of tadpoles is registered in order to have proof of how many animals have found a new habitat in the basins. The basins are located close to the Hammergraben. An artificial habitat has been created here suitable for the animals in the summer and winter time. All of the many different species here are important, but one is of particular interest to biologists, and that's the Bombina bombina, also known as the fire-bellied toad. Like in the ponds of the fisheries, here too it is in an ideal environment. As expected, many new plants have grown naturally amidst those that were replanted here. The number of amphibians is steadily increasing, including the fire-bellied toad. Vattenfall has commissioned environmental protection experts to conduct a wide range of research in and around the ponds and the renaturalization area. The ornithologist's day starts early. He studies the number and variety of birds. He'll continue these studies over a number of years in order to be able to draw conclusions about the population's development. In the renaturalization zone, a multitude of probes are driven into the ground. Their excavation allows conclusions to be drawn about the composition of the soil. At regular intervals, the water levels are measured from these probes. The most modern procedures, like GPS-supported perpendicular measuring, are used to gather knowledge about the geomorphologic condition of the pond bottom. At ponds that are no longer in use, botanists are already on site, researching water vegetation and, in particular, algae. The plan to transplant certain water plants is part of the compensation package. In their entirety, the results of all the biological and geological investigations comprise a picture of the situation before and after the renaturalization. The many individual measures will be planned in accordance with the research records. One of the stated goals is the successful transplantation of the valuable pond flora and fauna to the reservoir. Late summer. For the fishermen, it's time to assess the pond's quality for fish farming with a few trial catches. Meanwhile, research continues. Step by step, the life forms on the ground and in the air are recorded. Here, a biologist investigates the bat population in the pond area, tagging a sample. His research zone is the most expansive. On the basis of the watchwords, the otter's trails are researched. Samples are gathered and offer clues as to the mammal's nutritional habits and state of health. Over many centuries, the ponds have served the economic interests of human beings, while at the same time becoming a cultural landscape. Parcelled into lots like fields, the fishing ponds fit into the landscape, pointing to their economic functionality. Soon they will give way to benefit the last big economic sector in the Lausitz region, the energy industry. Wherever people see surface mining equipment appear, they naturally have lots of questions. What does it mean for the people who live here and the environment? These are valid questions to which there are answers. Utilizing local energy supplies is important for the economy. It secures the interests of consumers and makes them more independent of exports. It creates and sustains a substantial number of jobs. It secures a revived infrastructure and leaves behind a landscape that can be used in new ways. Cultural landscapes are created which reflect the needs and ideas of the people who live here. Where today the Spree still runs in an unnaturally straight line, there will soon be a natural landscape of riverside meadows. It will create space for new flora and serve as a retreat for wildlife. An important part of the renaturalization plan is the stabilization of the river's water supply. The first groundwork began in the winter of 2007 under difficult circumstances. In the Spree region around Cottbus, the soil was ploughed and the earth dug up, making room for 8 new ponds that are being created here. The renaturalization of the Spree wetlands north of Cottbus is a large-scale project, which will take until 2011 to complete. The project is being carried out in accordance with environmental protection guidelines by the engineering firm Gerstgrasser. It is financed by the energy producer Vattenfall. Many species will find new habitats here. Of the 37 types of fish that once lived here, several will return. Upgrading the environment and wildlife will also make the area more attractive for locals and visitors alike. The renaturalization of the Spree wetlands is an ecological project which will benefit today's and future generations. Renaturalizing the Spree wetlands. Project documentation. A film commissioned by Vattenfall Europe Mining and Generation.